Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. Before I hand it off to Mike, I just wanted to say thank you all for being here. Mike, you've ran a great past 3 pitch competitions. Welcome all to the 4th one. Before I toss it off to him, I just wanted to thank our sponsors, P&G Ventures, Kroger, First Financial, North American Properties, Vora Ventures, Taft, and KMK. This would not be possible without them. Please continue to use the Q&A tool today, and don't forget to fill out the survey on your way out. Mike, I'll hand it off to you to get started.
Great. Thanks, Dana. Well, welcome everybody. Monday morning, week 4. We've got about 10 days to pitch day, which is a week from this Friday. So this is the second to last training session, but today we're going to be going through build a pitch deck. We've got a lot of information for you today. Also, get ready to answer some polls and get ready to type in the chat, because I'm going to have some interaction here that I'm going to ask you all to kind of go through and do. So I'm kicking off right away. First of all, once again, thanks to all of our sponsors. We're so lucky to have them, making everything possible here for you guys. And it's been really good to have a partnership with each of these folks. Okay, so let's review where we've been and where we're going. So week 1, we went through problem identification. Week 2, we talked about how you solve the problem. You guys spent some great time doing some ideation. Last week, you heard about business model canvases from Chris Welter, and you've been working on those this week. I actually have a copy of all of them. You guys did a really, really good job. I will talk a little bit about those before we go into then finally building a pitch deck this week. So today is going to be all about how do you go build your pitch deck. And then next Monday, we're going to go through kind of logistics of how the presentation will work. I'll have some tips for you and all that. But your goal between now and next Sunday night is to build your first version of your pitch deck. Now, once again, this is a very compressed 5-week course that we're going through. If we had more time, I would love to spend about 3 weeks, talking about and practicing building your pitch and working your way through it. But we've only got a week to do it. So you guys will put up a great effort, I know, and I've got some great examples for you guys to take a look at. Okay, so here's our first poll. What best describes your week 3 efforts working on the business model canvas? Okay, this tool was really helped us think about our business. Wow, there's a lot to think about when starting a business. Loved working with this tool. Or what is business model canvas? Type in your answers there. Let's see where everybody is. A couple more seconds here. All right, let's close the poll. It's good. 50% of you really helped you think about the business. That's great, because this is a great tool for thinking through all the key pieces of your business, and it will really help you with your pitch deck. And it does, really work overall, and there's a lot to think about starting a business. Good news is nobody said they didn't know what the business model canvas is. So that's a good sign. Chris did a good job, I guess, explaining that, or at least understanding the basics of that. So go ahead and close that up. And okay. So what I'd like to do is, you guys submitted some great business model canvases. I just pulled out a couple here that I thought, were pretty straightforward, did a nice job kind of pulling things together. And I want to put these into just a couple examples for everybody to look at. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to after I go through these is, if you still need help with your business model canvas, I'm willing to kind of step in and work with you this week and the next day or two, because it really will help you with your pitch deck. But here's an example of the team that's working on the mass. Basically they identified people who, the customer key segments were people who are seeking greater comfort from mass, people who want something fashionable, students, children, teens. And so their proposition is how they can provide a mass that's both fashionable and comfortable, and it almost becomes an everyday accessory. They're looking for reusability potentially, and even making it potentially decomposable, which would be great if they could make that all work. Some of the channels, they see it selling it through the website, marketing it through social media, multimedia platforms, even using celebrities. And then just, they've thought through some of the things of what's it going to take to make money. We're going to sell our masks, probably directly in some stores. We're going to sell them also online. But then we've got costs we got to put up against this. How do we make the mass? Website designers, social media influencers, things like that. So this is a good example of kind of thinking through at least all the elements that might go into a business model like this. And when you have a layout like this, it really will help you through your pitch deck. So let me just pull up one more here. Once again, everybody, you did a good job on these, and I'm happy to help you some more with these. But this is the group that talked about helping businesses that really wanted to work on diversity and inclusion, as well as helping candidates find good jobs where they wanted to in a very kind of fair and open way. Their target segments were businesses with 50+ employees, candidates who feel marginalized in their job search. And basically, they want to help minorities gain new opportunities, help companies diversify, clean up the hiring process, take the hiring process off the companies, and take some stress away from the job search. They think about doing this through websites and job fairs. That makes a lot of sense. Some of the resources they know they're going to need is things like employees and interviewers and software and website. Then their revenue and cost streams, they thought through that. They've actually got a monthly fee they've thought through of $3.95. They're also going to charge people to access for premium access, some of the job searchers. And then they've thought through some of the costs they've got in there. So once again, a really nice example of a business model canvas, I think lays out a bunch of the things to think through. So first thing is, if your team still wants some help with business model canvas, go ahead and just type your team number into the chat area, and then Zaina will actually kind of grab those, and then I'll be able to reach back to you through Zand and help you if you want. So if you still want some help on business model canvas, just type your team name in there. If you think you're fine, don't worry about it, and we'll keep on moving through. Okay. All right. So I've got another poll now. Pitch contest is a week from Friday. What is the most important criteria to winning the pitch competition? Is it identifying an important problem? Is it solving a problem? Is it clearly explaining how your product or service works? Is it developing an effective go-to-market plan? Is it giving an enthusiastic, persuasive presentation? Which of those is most important? Go ahead and vote. Hey, Zaina, are you getting much background noise? Are we okay?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. I've got people cutting down trees in the neighborhood next to us.
I hear it vaguely, but it's not bad at all.
Okay. All right, let's close that poll. All right, 43% of you said enthusiastic presentation, number one. Number two is solving a problem. Everybody kind of split up the rest of those. Okay, this is a little bit of a trick question. It's actually all 5 of these things. All 5 of these are very, very important to your pitch. And that's what we're going to go through today, making sure you understand the criteria and how to actually put a pitch together. So the next slide here, I'm going to show a couple times here. Actually, no, slide after this. Okay, first of all, let's talk about the pitch competition. And we're going to go into more detail about this on Monday. But here's some of the basics that you need to know. First of all, the format for the pitch contest is 10 minutes per team. The first key point, though, is you only have 5 minutes to do your pitch. Not 5 minutes and 10 seconds, not 5 minutes and 30 seconds, 5 minutes. So you cannot exceed that. So it's going to be really important that you practice your pitch and get it comfortably down to 5 minutes. You can go a little bit shorter, but you should really feel comfortable. We'll have a way to give you a warning so you know how much time is left. But practice your pitch and make sure you get it to 5 minutes. That keeps it fair for all teams. We'll then have some judges there, and the judges after your pitch will then ask you some questions about your idea. And this is basically their opportunity for Q&A. You'll probably get 3, maybe 4 questions to answer. And so your team will answer those questions, and then we'll have about a minute to transition to the next team. So each team has 10 minutes, so that's the format. Okay, your team itself, because you only have 5 minutes, no more than 2 members per your team will be actually able to present. You just won't have enough time to switch back and forth so everybody can talk. So you'll have to figure out who are the 1 or 2 people on my team that are going to present. However, it's really key. There's going to be lots of other roles. We'll talk about this next week for the rest of your teammates. And then the third and final key point is all your team members need to be introduced on slide number 2. I'll show you in the template. So everybody is going to get visibility on this. It's just a matter of the presentation itself. You're going to have to keep it to one or two people. The judging criteria. The judges are going to be looking at 5 areas. What's the problem you've identified? What's the solution you've come up with? Have you clearly explained how it works? All too often people talk about the solution, but they haven't really thought about how it works and explains it well. What's your go-to-market plan? How are you actually going to have people learn about this? What's your marketing and sales effort? And then finally, what's your overall presentation effectiveness? How good were your slides? How enthusiastic were you? All those kinds of things. So that's the criteria. We'll talk more about this next week, but that's basically the framework as we kind of work our way forward here. Okay, this slide I'm going to show twice, but this is kind of the hint slide that kind of frames everything we're going to go through the rest of today. So first of all, key things for your pitch decks. You want clean, easy to read slides, okay? Not really long, wordy slides. These should be clean, easy slides. I'm going to show you a couple examples. You want to try to use photos and graphs or informatics where possible. Your bullet points should be short and punchy, 3 to 7 words. And the key thing with your slides is the slides are not what you're reading off of to tell everybody. They're just simply there to support you. So your slides are support what you say. They're not their script for what you're going to say. So you really want to work carefully on your slides. Keep them concise, precise, and persuasive overall. You really want to kind of think about the words you put on your slides. Once again, I'm going to show you some examples here I think will help you. You want to use data where possible. There's a couple slides here I'm going to show you that really yearn for you to bring some data to the table. So you want to kind of find some data and then cite your sources that really kind of backs up some of your ideas. We are telling a story. Your pitch deck needs to tell a story in 5 minutes. You want to pull the audience in by identifying a really good problem, explain what your solution is. You're going to explain how it works, how you're going to make money, how you're going to go to market, and then what your next steps are. It's got a beginning and its end. So you're going to try to tell a story throughout. Here's a key thing to think about every slide you put up. Basically, build your slide, and here's how you test it. First of all, you say to yourself, what do I want to tell the audience with this slide? Then go practice presenting that slide, practice in front of the rest of your teammates, and then ask yourself and ask the rest of the team, did we tell the audience what we wanted to with this slide? And if you can't clearly say that, then the slide probably needs some work, or maybe your presentation needs some work. But each slide has a really key part. You're only going to have probably 10 to 15 slides tops to go do your entire presentation. So you really want each of these slides to work carefully to kind of really tell your story overall. And then finally, recall week 2, we are selling lottery tickets, not dimes. Lottery tickets bring an emotional response. Quarters and dimes do not. So overall, we want you to get, pull in the audience with a very emotional kind of story, something that's really impactful and persuasive as we kind of work our way through it. Okay, so we'll come back to that slide again. The best way to kind of have me bring this to life is actually showing you some examples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the original Uber pitch deck and the original Airbnb pitch deck. These were the decks that they actually took out to their investors the first time through. Then I'm going to show you a Centrifuge pitch deck template, and we'll kind of go through that overall. So let's see. Okay, so let me start by going over to the Uber pitch deck. I'm going to have to stop a share here and open that up. So bear with me a second while I transition slides here. All right. Share. 1 second here. There we go. So there we go. Okay. All right. So this is the original Uber pitch deck. So, and I purposely picked Uber and Airbnb because we've talked a lot about those before. I'm going to show you this pitch deck. So a couple things about these pitch decks. These are longer than the ones you're going to develop because these companies were a little bit more developed and some additional slides that you're not going to have to worry about. And two is these were longer presentations. These presentations were probably, you know, maybe as long as 30 minutes initially. So your pitch deck's going to be slower or shorter, but this will actually give you a general feel for what a good pitch deck looks like overall. So with that, Uber talked about it as we're Uber Cab, next generation car service. So they had a name for the company, Uber Cab, that's what they originally called it. And they even had a tagline, next generation car service. So it kind of said, all right, you're about car service, but you're really taking it to another level. So when we go through your pitch decks, you know, you want to try to have a company name. It's great if you have a little slogan. And then if you want a logo, you can kind of add one or not. That's not that important from a logo standpoint. But come up with a company name, come up with a tagline. That's always a nice thing to kind of really frame everything you're going to talk about. Okay. They start right with the problem. The problem with cabs in 2008, it was aging and inefficient technology. We've talked about that. You know, you basically would have to call in to order a cab. You got a Crown Victoria that was kind of old and beat up. Hailing was done by hand or phone. You know, you basically had to kind of find somebody and hopefully get somebody to pick you up. Big problem. Another big problem was tax monopolies really reduced the ability for quality service. If you wanted to drive a taxi cab, you basically had to buy this thing called a medallion. They were expensive and the like. And so there really was no way to kind of have competitive cab service out there at all and the like. So that was another problem. So their solution was the Uber Cab concept. And they talked about fast and efficient on demand. Its market was professionals in American cities. It was the convenience of a cab in New York City with the experience of a professional chauffeur. So think about that, a neat combination. You know, easy to get a cab, but also a very professional person. And they talked about latest consumer technology and things of that nature. They then talked about how it works, a one-click car service. You got to be a member to join. You hail it from your phone and the like. It's all digital, and you're guaranteed pickup. Some key differentiators about why it was so different. It was one-click hailing, members only. The fleet was optimized. I'm going through this, by the way, fairly fast just to make sure we get to all the slides I want to show you. Fast response time, luxury automobiles, a high-tech solution, great drivers. All things, when you look at that list of things up there and you understand the problems of cab, you say, oh my gosh, this thing seems so much better than everything out there. So they set the problem really well, talked about their solution, and then showed how they differentiated themselves. They had a thing here on operating principles, kind of one of those extra slides. They talked about the product, and then they started to show how the actual product worked and had some examples with some screenshots and the like. They talked about some use cases. You could, you know, use it to get fast local transport when parking wasn't easy. You could use it for restaurants and bars, airport, people coming from the airport, people working while commuting. Lots of ideas they had for using it. They talked about the benefits to users, and then they showed some of their initial go-to-market area. So once again, this is another thing you probably will not have. You guys have only been working on your products for a little bit of time. So I don't expect you to really kind of have it figured out exactly what you're going to go do to, you know, go to market or what's your next step. But they talked here about they started in San Francisco. They talked a little bit about their technology, demand forecasting, how they would kind of manage that. Then they talked about the overall market size, how big it was. And then they talked about the various different segments and the like. A lot of detail in this one. This was easily a 30-minute presentation. And they talked on how they were going to go to San Francisco secondly and then expand to some of the other major cities. So eventually they'd have 50% of the entire business. A little bit about what their best case and worst case scenario was. Another little bit of market size on location-based services, some other data slides, some smart sales, a lot of detail here, some future optimization ideas. So the bottom line is you get a general feel for some of the things that they talked about. But notice a lot of these slides, there's a graphic and a picture. It's a real simple headline and then some simple bullet points under each one, and they're trying to tell a story. Now, there's a lot of slides in this deck. You're only, like I said, 10 or 12. So this will be, I think, a lot easier for you to kind of go do. Let me move over to the Airbnb deck. And by the way, I will send a copy of both these decks on. Do not use these decks necessarily as a template, but you can use these decks as kind of inspiration to say, okay, here's kind of the general look and feel that we might be trying to develop for our presentation. Okay, so Airbnb, once again, I know you guys are all familiar with that. So Airbnb, book rooms with locals rather than hotels. Pretty simple kind of tagline. That's what Airbnb is about. They have their logo right there, nice simple picture. So they talked about the problem. Everybody, you always start with the problem. So price is an important concern for consumers booking travel online. This was also, they started in 2008, right after the recession, so it was a really big issue. Hotels leave you disconnected from the city and its culture, and there's no easy way to book a room with a local or become a host. That's the problem. Their solution was a web platform. I might even argue that their solution slide here is better than Uber's because it's really simple. It helped people save money when traveling. That was the first problem. It helped people make money when hosting. That was the second problem for hosts. And then there's a share culture, it's a local connection to the city. The other thing also they talked about, which I don't know how many of you have heard about, but back then there was a service called couch surfing, which it still exists today, but it was basically a way for people to stop at a home that would give them a free place to stay overnight. It was called couch surfing. It still exists today. And all they simply said was, well, some people would be willing to do that if they could make some money doing it. So they use that analogy of, that there's a share culture today and people were sharing their homes already. Now we just want to give them an opportunity to make money doing it. So very simple solution side, problem slide, solution side, very, very simple. I really like how these two kind of go back to back. Then they talked about the market validation. And they kind of said, well, first of all, there's 670,000 people on Craigslist who are listing homes and rooms and things like that. Couch surfing has 17,000 people. So that kind of said, okay, there's a market out here for this. There's people doing something like this already. They then came up with a number of trips booked worldwide, 2 billion trips. They estimated 560 million of them were budget or online. So basically the people that were looking to actually book something that was a lower cost or budget. And then their hope was to get 15% share of that, or 84 million trips. So, and actually this slide is what we tend to call, the left talks about how big the market is. The middle one talks about what's the serviceable available market. So what's our target within the big market? And then finally, what's our target share of that market we're trying to get? Once again, it's a really simple market slide. It's really simple to explain. This is the kind of slides that we're going to kind of want you to add into the presentation. Once again, I'll show you the template here in a second. The product now, they talked about how the product actually worked. And so they had a number of screenshots. So first of all, you search by city, find what city you're going to. You can then review all the listings in that city. It showed you a map and it showed you where the prices were. It had some pictures of the actual homes. Then you could drill down into each listing, look a little bit more about it, find out if it was available during your time, and then go ahead and book it. I could learn about the host. I could read reviews, all sorts of things to make it super easy. And then they talked about what's their business model. How are they going to go make money? So they were going to go get 84 million bookings at an average of $25 per fee. They were going to charge 10% commission on every transaction. And that was going to generate $200 million of projected revenue for them by 2011. So what's interesting about that, by the way, so these guys started in 2008. So their goal is to generate $200 million in revenue. And I believe now they're generating about $3 billion, $4 billion of revenue easily a year right now. So they've gone way past that here 9 years later. But a real simple business model. We take 10% transaction, and then here's our assumptions for how much money we can make long term. How are they going to actually go to market? They're going to have events to talk about things, and some target events are going to try to sell their rooms around. So they knew about some upcoming big events where people are going to actually coming into a city. They were going to have partnerships with people like Kayak and Orbitz, and they were going to actually dual post their listings on Craigslist. So that was some of the ways they were going to get people to learn about their service and find out about it. They talked about the competition. And so, they kind of built this little map where it said, affordable versus expensive, and then offline versus online. Airbnb was all about affordable online transactions. They could talk about other competitors kind of being in those other spaces. And they talked about what's our competitive advantage? What makes us different? Well, first of all, we're the first to market with temporary housing. Super simple, easy to use. We've got profiles. You can book in 3 clicks. You can, if you're on the other side, you can list your property once and it's automatically out there and on Craigslist at the same time. Beautiful design of our website, very simple and friendly to use. And then hosts can make money, and basically it's better than couch surfing. So if you have a couch surfing home, why not turn it into an Airbnb home instead and actually make some money? So those were the competitive advantages they had to talk about. And once again, I really love these slides because just look how simple they are. I mean, nice visuals, short, punchy copy, and you can really tell a story behind it. They then talked about their team, and I think all 3 of these guys are still involved in the team. They talked about press. You're not going to have to worry about press, but they had some press in terms of people that were covering them, Mashable and Josh Spear and some other people like that. They had some user testimonials there. Once again, you wouldn't necessarily have that. And then they talked about their financials, how much money they were looking for, how much money they were hoping to generate. Once again, we don't have to worry about that slide because we're going to ask for money on our pitches this week. And then that was basically it. So this pitch deck, I really like even better than the Uber deck. And I think this one is a really good model for you guys to think about. It's done very simply. It's almost slide by slide is what I'm going to ask you guys to go do. So once again, I will send a copy of these to all of you guys so you'll have a copy of that. Let me stop the share and go back to my PowerPoint. All right, and then once again, feel free to type any questions into the Q&A area if you have any. Okay, so let's see. All right, give me 1 second here to get back up. Okay. Okay, so let's go through what does your pitch deck look like? What do we want you to kind of develop? So I'm going to show you the slides and we'll talk about those. Feel free to throw in some Q&A if you have some. Let me just actually make sure we don't have anything going on here. But no, I don't see any. But I'm going to kind of show you the template here. Think of this as this is probably the right order for you. You might have 2 slides instead of 1 slide for some of these sections. If you really think you need a second slide, you might change the order a little bit, but really only if you think you really need to. So let me show you the basic template here and we'll go through this. So the first slide is come up with a company name and put your team logo on it. And basically your company name, put your team number on it, sorry. If you have a logo or if you have a tagline, feel free to add that. You do not need a logo, you do not need a tagline, but come up with your company name and do put your team number on it. We're actually going to be doing the presentations in chronological order. So team 1 will be going first and it'll just be easy for everybody to keep track of stuff and the judges will have everything kind of that way too. So your company name and team number is your first slide, logo and tagline optional. Your next slide is, I want you to introduce your team, okay? So get a picture of everybody, throw it up there, first name, last name, put what school you're from and put what and what age you are, okay? I want the judges to kind of see who's the members of the team. And so this is the entire team, not just the people presenting. I want the entire team up there. Do not put any email addresses on there or do not put your phone numbers on there. We want to protect your personal information. All the judges and everybody watching this, because it's going to be streamed live, will be able to identify you by your team name and number. By the way, okay, so here's another interaction question. Go in the chat and type in Who are these 5 people? Let's see if we can get all 5 of them named out here. Who are these 5 people? Oprah, good. Yep. Lynn Miranda, good. Oprah, we got Oprah and Lynn. Who else is up there? Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, good. We got one more. Who's the woman on the left-hand side? Anybody recognize her? She actually spoke at the P&G Signal event. That's actually Amy Chang, who started a company and also is on the board of, or is running it now for Cisco Software, and she's on the board of P&G. So anyway, but that's your team slide. Okay, let's move on along here. Okay, your first major slide is the problem. By the way, this words up there is what we call Greek. It just simply fills in. It just kind of says you're going to put, copy up there. So basically your first slide is the problem, okay? This should be a pretty easy slide for you, hopefully, because we've talked a lot about problem from day 1. So basically go back to your week 1 work. Look at your iterations, because I'm sure you may have iterated since then. But basically on this slide, you want to clearly state the problem and identify who has the problem. And you want to tell a story about that problem. You want the judges to kind of truly understand this problem, how big the problem is, why the problem needs to be solved, who has the problem. Okay, so make sure you're clearly talking about that. Do not jump to the solution. This slide is strictly about the problem. You're basically setting up the next slide. So this is all about the problem itself. Recall that both Uber and Airbnb did a really good job, and it was their very first slide after they got going. What's the problem? Okay, the next slide is the solution, a really simplified version of the solution, very much like our week 2 work. It's just simply, some simple words and a visual perhaps that basically just identify the overarching solution to the problem. A way to make sure you feel this slide is really working for you is you want to make sure it's short and sweet, and make sure that when you look at this slide following the previous slide, that I clearly have an idea, okay, I understand the problem, and I think these guys have an interesting solution. You don't have to talk about everything and how it works on this slide, just enough of it, the overarching kind of overview of it, that somebody says, okay, I understand what you're doing, now tell me more. Okay, so this is the solution slide. Once again, go back to week 2 work. I think that'll help a lot. And you want to kind of keep it short and sweet here and kind of make sure it addresses the previous one. Okay, the next slide. Airbnb did this on their next slide too. So this is the order I really want you to go do it in. I want you to talk about the market size. How big is this problem? And this is where you're going to want to go look and try to find some data. When you find data, I want you to make sure you also cite the source. So put it in the footnotes and the like. But how big is the market size? What are some ways you could describe the market for your problem? What data do you know about? How can you kind of make some estimations? Have you seen some articles about it? Do a little bit of research about it. You probably had some data kind of in mind when you thought about it. So in chat right now, let's throw it back out to you guys. Describe your market size. How would you guys describe your market size? Just think about your individual product. You probably haven't really thought about this totally yet in the business model canvas in terms of how big it is, but go ahead and type in the chat how you might describe your market size and what data you might use. Let me just kind of see what answers are being popped up there. How would you guys describe your market size? You might look to Business Insider, okay, for some data. That's good. What else? CB Insight, good, good. Where else might you get some data? NAIMI data, good. Equal opportunity stats for companies, good. Look at similar companies that exist. That's a really good one. Yeah, the nice thing is we've got this magical encyclopedia called Google where you can pretty much Google any question and you may be able to find some quick data right away. Okay, so I want you to find some data. All these resources are great. Look at executives of other companies. That's another good one too. And try to come up with a way to dimensionalize the size of your market. How big is your market for your problem? And you may want to talk about it a couple different ways. So if you're thinking about, the US market size for a number of people that, let's go back to the folks that were worried about hiring, how many people apply for jobs per year? You might start with that. Then you might make an estimation of what percentage of those people are not necessarily getting, full equal billing and being fairly reviewed. So you might come up with an estimate of that. You might then come down with an estimate of, in Cincinnati, what do you think that number is? And you might show all three of those numbers. That'd be three different ways to kind of dimensionalize it. So think about how you kind of pull it together in a way that kind of talks about the size of your market, okay? So this is the first slide that we're talking about that you really haven't done any work previous on it. So this week, you're gonna have to kind of think about how are we gonna talk about our market size and how big the market is overall, okay? And once again, feel free to type in any questions if you guys have in a Q&A. Okay, next slide here. We just did that one. Okay, now we want to talk about your product or service. You kind of talked about it in a really overarching way. The next couple slides, I want you to bring it to life. So this is a really good slide to bring a visual in, bring a diagram in, bring an informatic in, put some pictures in there, grab some pictures that are, maybe look like your target customer or sketch out a rough drawing of your product. But basically, you're going to kind of introduce your product or service and begin talking about it. And once again, I think a visual really helps, do this. And this slide and the next slide kind of all work together. So you can start to talk about how it works, or you might wait till the next slide and really take the time to describe how your product or service works. This is where your business model canvas, you guys have already thought about some of the relationships, how you're going to sell it, what the product does and all that. You clearly want to make sure people understand what your product or service is. It should be crystal clear. You've kind of given them an overarching solution, but make sure you clearly describe how it works. A good way to test this, by the way, is practice these couple slides on a couple people. Practice them on your team first, but then practice them on some people who don't know anything about your product or service, okay? See if they get it. Because you guys on your own team, you've been talking about this for 3 or 4 weeks now. You guys get it. But you want to kind of find some people who don't know anything about your product or service and test these couple slides on it. Because if they don't understand how your product or service works, then you probably have to work on these slides a little bit better. You want the judges to clearly understand how your product works, okay? What's the various pieces of it overall? Okay. Key differentiators. What makes your product different? Is it just another Me Too, or is there some really differentiation out there? So it depends on what kind of problem you guys are trying to solve. If you're trying to solve a problem that's never been solved before, you may not have a direct, differentiation versus, or you may have, your differentiation may be kind of how are people trying to solve the problem today, and then how you're going to really solve it in a more meaningful way. Or there may be some competitive products out there that kind of address the problem, but don't address it anywhere near the way you're going to address it. So what's your differentiation? Once again, go back to the Airbnb slide and even Uber. Both had some really good slides on what made their product so different. Okay, so you've described how it works. Here you're going to tell them how you're different versus other things out there. Then you want to talk about the competition. Who is the competition? How will you be different? These two slides go hand in hand. You may want to talk about the competition first and then how you're differentiated. So you could potentially flip these two slides, or you can do it the order I did it here. I think in the Airbnb, they did it in this order. Your choice, whichever you think flows best. But have a slide about the competition, and then have a slide about how you're really different. You really want to kind of set it up and make people understand what makes us different. Okay, next slide. Sales and marketing plan. Okay, you've built a product or service. You've identified how you're different. Guess what? If you build it, they will not come. You have to figure out how you're going to tell people about your product. Okay, how are you going to make sure people learn about your product? What's the marketing and sales effort? You guys spent some time thinking about this past week. When you built your business model canvas, you were kind of building out some of the marketing and sales plan. You guys have already identified, the different relationships you're going to need, the different ways to potentially reach customers. So you want to kind of look at that business model canvas, think about it a little bit further, and develop a convincing plan, a convincing story about how you're going to actually make your product and service. You got to create awareness, you got to create trial, you got to create usage of that product. How are you going to go do that? Okay. What are you going to do overall? Let's see how we're doing. Any questions here? Just saw something pop up. All right. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. Yep. Continue to feel free to ask questions as we kind of go along here. Okay. So in chat right now, what are some of the key ways you plan to market and sell your product or service? What are some of your go-to-market ideas for marketing and selling your product or service? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Think about your product or service. What are some of the ways you guys have been thinking about marketing and selling this? Okay, you're going to go talk to customer segments. I got that. How are you going to go talk to them? So let's assume you had, so Patrick, let's assume you had the product or service ready to go. How would you actually then go market it and sell it? Let's assume it was a final product. What would be your go-to-market plan? The bug light effect. I'm not sure I know what the bug light effect is. Turn the light on and everybody goes after the light, I guess. Haven't really heard it described as that. Advertising through social media. That's an obvious one everybody talks about because it's obviously less expensive. What else? Look at your business model canvas. What were some of the things you guys identified? A number of you had some good ideas on there. Key things to ask yourself are, what channels are you going to be selling the product in? What's it going to take to go be successful in those channels? Social media is great, but you may need to do some advertising. You may need to have a direct sales force to kind of go call on customers. You may need to have some POS in stores to kind of promote your product so people actually know what it's about. You may do celebrity endorsements. I remember seeing that. What are the various different ways you're going to go market and sell your product or service? So think through those carefully. Advertise at job fairs. Good. I remember that one. That was a really good one. Makes a lot of sense. What's the best way to reach your target market? For the people who are doing the mass, how are you going to go advertise and market that? How can you go find the people who care most about having a fashionable mask? What might be the ways you go do that? You really want to kind of think through all those various different things. Okay, so that's the marketing and sales piece. Okay, we haven't talked this yet either directly, but you already have some of the information there. At the end of the day, you guys are building a business, okay? A business needs to make money, or even if it's a nonprofit, it needs to generate enough revenue to cover its costs. So at the end of the day, you've got to figure out, okay, how are we going to make this thing work? How are we going to go make money? So once again, look at your business model canvas. At the bottom of the business model canvas, you guys identified some revenue streams and you identified some cost streams. So how are you going to make money? How are you going to go charge for your product? What's the different ways to kind of go do it? Are you going to sell your product? Are you going to have an option also to rent your product? What's the actual fees going to be? The job fair team or the job one thought about they're going to try to make money both from the employer and the employee. They thought about actual numbers. They had some, really good assumptions in there. So what are your revenue and cost streams? You want to kind of build a business case for this. Look at the Airbnb and Uber one. They both had some good examples of how they were going to make money, how much money they could make. Airbnb was a really simple one. 84 million rooms. They were going to kind of get a booking for, which is a 15% share. They were going to have a 10% commission, and that was going to generate $200 million. So it was really clear. They just charge a 10% commission. It's a really simple business model. And then they knew what kind of costs they had to kind of cover. So how are you guys going to go make money? That's the next slide. Okay, so how are you guys going to go make money? Type that in the chat. Have you guys thought through that? What's the way you're going to make money with your product? Have you thought about the pricing? Have you thought about the different ways to sell? Go ahead and type that in the chat. Take a look at your business model canvas. What are some of the ways you guys have identified to make money? There we go. A finder's fee, 1% back of our revenue that our customers generate. Good. Earning a small commission from each purchase done through our website and app. Good. What I want you guys to think about is on this slide, I really want you to think about, okay, what is that small commission? What is that finder's fee? Think about the actual numbers you're thinking about initially. Optional donations for a free service. Maybe that's a nonprofit. A monthly subscription fee. Okay, so those are all good things. The key thing is figure out what you're going to assume. What's the actual number you're going to assume, and then do the math and figure out, okay, how much money will that generate based upon how big I think my market's going to be, how many people I'm going to try to sell. And then is that going to cover my costs? I'm going to be able to make money at the end of that? Selling advertising on my app. That's good. Company endorsement for their own resources that are on our app. That's great. Okay, you guys are thinking about the right kinds of things. Subscription to the software, through a SaaS model. Terrific. All right. So those are the ways to make money. Think about what the assumptions are and what the actual numbers are. Really good. Nice job with the suggestions there. Okay, from there, now that I know how much I'm charging for my service and I know what potentially my costs are, I should be able to put together an estimate of what my revenue forecast might be. Once again, really simple chart. It can be as simple as this. How many users or how many sales do I think I'm going to have? What's my revenue I think I'm going to generate? And then I know about what my costs are. And then what does that leave me for my net income or my profit at the end of the day? This is just simply your best guesstimate of kind of what the revenue looks like. Most companies do not make money in the first year. Many don't make money in the second year. It's okay if you assume you're going to lose money in years 1 and 2, okay? That's not uncommon. In fact, actually, it probably shows a sense of reality because you're going to incur costs before you actually can generate enough revenue to cover those costs. But you want to put together a plan. So what I'm suggesting here is put together a 4-year plan. Think about starting next year. So assume you maybe spend the rest of this year figuring out your product. And let's assume we launch in 2021. How many people or how many sales might you get, what the revenue might be, what your net income might be, and what's the assumptions behind there, okay? And you want to kind of estimate overall. Don't be unrealistic, and it's okay if you don't make money in years 2 or until 2 or 3, okay? Very, very, very common overall. And also, unrealistic. So think about Airbnb. They talked about generating $200 million. That's a small slice of the marketplace, but it's still a big enough number. So you guys don't have to, create 50 million or $200 million companies. It could be something that's going to generate, $500,000 or $1 million, in year 2 or 3. That, and if you want to kind of work your way that way. But the bottom line is I want you to think through what are my assumptions to go create something here and what would be the sales and profit as we kind of go build it out. Okay. Next slide. Okay. This is really the last slide. This is a little different because of where you guys are in the pitch competition. Typically in a pitch competition, you would have had a lot more time to think through things. We probably would have had more time to do testing and validation of your ideas. Often there's a slide in a pitch deck that talks about what's your validation. And usually you've done some market research or you've done some other ways to get feedback on your idea, and then you kind of share that feedback, and it gives the investors a better idea of kind of where you are and how big the idea is and how well you've thought through it. But we're going to keep this even simpler. What are your next steps? You know, after working on this thing for 5 weeks, what do you guys want to go do with your business idea? How would you kind of move forward with it? How might you test it? That might be your next step, you know, or maybe you still need to perfect some things. You know, you might identify, well, we really want to kind of get some advice from somebody on in the career market area and have them, you know, get some feedback. We might want to then go out and show some people some samples of what the website might look like and get some feedback there. And then maybe the next step there would be looking to go develop our pitch deck further to go get additional funding. It might be that simple. How might you get additional help to build it out? So let me just take a little side trip for a second. So in the Cincinnati area, we have things called accelerators. Accelerators are organizations that help companies get going in their early stages. Think of it kind of as a postgraduate school for startup businesses. And basically you apply to an accelerator. We have about 10 of them here in Cincinnati. And then if you're accepted, they actually put you through a coaching program for 6 to 15 weeks, depending upon the accelerator. Often there's money available at the end of those, and you get lots of professional mentoring and additional coaching and all that stuff. That might be your next step. You might want to apply to an accelerator. So, you know, you can reach out to Centrifuge. They can tell you about all the accelerators. That might be a next step. You might decide you want to just keep working on your pitch. You might decide you want to go enter some more pitch contests. You might decide you want to, you know, get some full-time advisor and help on this and keep working it through. Have some clear next steps of where you want to go with your idea. I know it's been really quick. We've kind of only worked on this for 3 or 4 weeks, but talk it through as a team. Get some consensus on what you want to go do and what your next steps are. Okay, then here's just, we're going to finish with your company name. You're going to put your team number up there. Once again, you can bring in your logo or your tagline. And once again, no email addresses or phone numbers. We may have as many as 500 to 1,000 people watching your pitch day. If they have your company name and your team number, they can figure out how to contact you. And you might be surprised. There might be somebody who's listening who says, I want to help this team. It may help you with advice. They may help you with introductions. They may have a company where your product idea fits perfectly. There's lots of possibilities here. So I want you to go into this pitch contest, not with just the goal of, I want to do the best we possibly can. It would be great to win it. Maybe I can actually make connections and meet somebody and take our idea to the next level. So that's what we're trying to kind of go do overall. Okay, any questions on anything we've gone through? Let me just see if there's any Q&A. Okay, I don't see any questions that have come up. I think we're doing really good on time. Yeah, we're at 11 o'clock right now. Okay, so let me go through. Once again, I told you I'd bring back this slide again. Okay, so key things for your pitch deck. Understand a template. Develop some clean, easy to read slides. Photos, graphs, informatics. Bullet points, 3 to 7 words, each bullet point. No more than 3 to 7 words, really short, bitey. Make sure they support what you're gonna say. They don't have to be written out full sentences. Keep things precise, concise, and persuasive. Use data where possible. Do cite your sources on those slides. You want to build a story. We've got a beginning to an end. We're setting a problem and a solution, and we're finishing up with what our next steps are and everything in between. Think about building that story. You've got to do it also in 5 minutes. So you're going to have to really build your pitch deck, practice it, and make sure you got it at 5 minutes. Every slide you build, make sure it tells a story. What do I want to tell the audience with this slide? Practice it. And then ask yourself, did I tell the audience the right thing? Practice your pitch deck with some people who don't know your pitch. That will also help you give you some good feedback. And remember, we're selling lottery tickets, not dimes and quarters here. We really want to kind of create an emotional connection to what your business idea is. You guys have some really good business ideas. You really have done a great job here in the time we have. So I really want you to kind of bring it to the show here and do well overall. Okay, I did see a Q&A question pop up here. Let me see what that is. What are the best methods for constructing 4-year revenue stream? Okay, good question, Bryce. So I don't want, normally we would even spend a whole day talking about how you go build a financial pro forma and how that looks and all that. I want you to keep it really simple. You guys have an estimate. You know what you're going to have to spend some money on cost-wise for your various different elements from your business model canvas. You know how you're going to try to generate revenue. So start by, first of all, just figuring out how many users you're going to get or how many sales you're going to get, and then what's your cost or revenue per sale, and that'll be your revenue side of the equation. You might want to, once again, start conservatively for year 1 and 2, and then build towards where you want to get to by year 4. The cost side, we would normally probably spend a lot more time thinking about all the costs and estimating those out. Just put your best guesses together for that. The judges are not going to really judge that slide very hard. They just want to make sure that you've thought through how you potentially can generate money and how big this might be overall. So in the constrained time we have, we really don't have enough time to go into a really good how to go build a revenue pro forma. But once again, if you guys get into an accelerator, you get more time in a pitch contest, you can do that. If you wind up going to one of the universities here in the area, we all teach that kind of stuff. So you will really learn that in other places. But that's how you should do it for this time. So any other questions anybody has? Anything in chat anybody wants to type? Okay. So, so here is our last poll question. So how excited are you to build your pitch deck? Ramped up and ready to go. What did I get myself into? A bit nervous, but glad I'm here. Take no prisoners. All the other teams are playing for second. I'm ready to change the world. Go ahead and vote. Which one best describes you? All right, let's close that poll. Take no prisoners. Everybody's playing for second, tied with ramped up and ready to go. That's terrific. So you guys, I tell you, once again, you have some really good ideas. I am really, proud of what I've seen you guys do. A few of you say, I'm a bit nervous, but glad you're here. Here's the great thing about this pitch competition. You are getting exposure to how these things work. And, very few people, at your age get exposure this early to doing this kind of thing. So this is some great experience. And with your ideas, who knows what could happen a week from Friday. So go in there with a really positive attitude. And once again, you guys have some great, great, great ideas. I do have some homework for you guys. Okay, so here's your homework. Okay, work on your pitch decks this week, okay? It's a week from Friday is the pitch, okay? I want to seek out your mentor for help. This is probably maybe the most important week to make sure you're reaching out to your mentor. They can help coach you. They can help you look at your deck, see if it makes sense, help you figure out some of the charts if you're having trouble figuring out how do I put a revenue model chart together, or what's my market size? Does this make sense, and all that stuff. I am really going to make myself as available as possible for you guys this next week, though, because this is kind of the really hard part to kind of put everything together at the end, and you're going to only have a week from Friday. So do reach out to me for help on either tweaking your business model canvas, if you still have some questions on that, because that will help your pitch deck or your pitch deck specifically. And I will make myself as available as possible. So you've got my email address. We'll put it again in the email out, or the email that goes out with this week's presentation. And feel free to reach out to Xander, Zaina to ask them to get in contact with me if for some reason you don't have that. But I want you to have your first version of the pitch deck ready by next Sunday. So you should be sending that into Xand again So we've got that. Next week, we probably won't have time to go through individual pitch decks, but I'm trying to figure a way I can help do that with you guys also too, so you can practice it. But have your first version ready, because my guess is what will happen. I've done this many, many times, is if you have your first version ready on Sunday, you'll still have enough time to tweak it a couple times. And by the time Friday comes around, a week from Friday, you'll probably tweak it 2 or 3 or 4 times, and then you'll have practiced it enough and feel comfortable with it. But if you don't have your first pitch deck by next Sunday, then you're not going to have enough time to practice it, enough time to tweak it. So really do your best job of getting the first one done by Sunday. And in his end, next week we'll talk about the logistics for actually how the pitch works, the technology behind it. Bethany from Miami University is going to explain how that all works and how the judges will be working. And then I'll have some final tips and tricks for you for your pitch and all that stuff. Okay, any last minute questions? Actually, I got another one here. Nope, I think we did that one. Good. All right. Good. Okay. Well, this was a little shorter this week. Hopefully you've got everything you need. We are going to send you a copy of this deck. This is being recorded so you can look at it again, share it with your teammates. I will send also copies of the Uber and Airbnb deck, and then reach out to me if you want help this week. Email me and I'll make time, and we'll set some time up for me to jump on a call with you and do some stuff. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Zaina, and we'll see you guys next Monday.
Thanks, Mike, for another great training session today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I will be sending out an email later with the recorded version of this session, and then Mike's slide deck and the examples that he'll send to me later. Students, we love hearing your feedback. Please fill out the quick survey that pops up once you leave the meeting. Please join us at 12 for our next webinar, Discovering Your Entrepreneurial Gig, Clean Earth Rovers, with Michael Ahrens, Xavier University, class of 2021. I'll see you all soon. Thanks again, Mike.
Great. Bye now.